Funding for this program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by annual financial support from viewers like you.
Hey guys, it's Tanner here. You're watching Shlama Show. Well, I guess this is the fourth one of these I have ever done. I would like to thank nobody, because I can. Anywho's, screw you and let's get over with this. Let's get this over with. I have citations for everything I'm about to talk about in the description. I have the entire document in the description. This is a script I have written. This is all prepared. JHVH, the name of the Abrahamic God. I wish I was kidding. When people say, don't speak in the Lord's name in vain, this is it. Why do they do this? I don't know. Anywho, 2024 is the Chinese Year of the Dragon. Let's start this year with this. The world is cruel. Therefore, I choose not to be. I love being a goofball. It's so fun, and I don't know why. One thing I consider very special about being labeled the goofball is that you can just embrace it. Think about it. You can just be a goofball. So for me, the answer is simple. I do. I really love writing. It is by far my favorite thing to do. Simply put, it seems for the mere fact that this is because I can make a video out of my writings. Pardon me. The earth is getting worse. I don't want to upset or depress you. That being said, I must inform you of the fact of climate change. However, honestly, climate change at this current point is like second or third fiddle for me personally. Our ever-so-glorious President, Joseph Robinette Biden, is essentially both so dead and alive at the same time that he is supporting genocide, there I said it, genocide, left and right. That being said, the right has been gaining in international elections and in local elections as well. Not a fun time to be alive, for sure. Only Joe Biden can fuck up what should be a slam dunk of a victory. But I think it is worth noting, flubbing is the tendency of liberals, so I wouldn't be too entirely shocked. It would have been nice to have some more options, though. That's all I'm gonna say. You know, I really fucking hate when these dumbasses say, let's go Brandon, instead of fuck Joe Biden. What an actual cowardice. What actual cowards. Be a man, be better, and most of all, grow up. How long do you, the listener, think we have before collapse? Do you think we will make it out of the century? I don't think we will, and that sucks. Or sometimes I don't think we will, and that sucks. But what is to be done? Of course, look on the bright side. Look on the bright side, because if we make it out of the 21st century, basically this very same question will repeat itself for another 100 years. I think the worst thing on this god-forsaken trench of a planet is when you forget what you want to tell someone. And with that being said, happily, I present to you whatever the rest of this is. Some people think that drugs, specifically psychedelics, make you more progressive or quote-unquote enlighten you. And while I understand the potential value in therapeutic uses of these unique chemicals, I perhaps will offer a counterpoint, a counter-agenda to you, the listener. Perhaps we should not apply such morality to chemicals. I mean, after all, doing so is what has gotten us where we are with the addition of a little-known law called the Controlled Substances Act. I present to you the story of an infamous philosopher by the name of Nick Land, better known as the father of accelerationism. Now, bear with me. This is going to be an amphetamine-fueled story, as that was Nick Land's weapon of choice. Nick Land's contribution to the school of thought, in my opinion, is both a blessing and a curse, yet it was simply a logical inevitability. Or as Mark Fisher put it, and I quote, Land's withering assaults on the academic left remain trenchant, although problematic since Marxism is nothing if it is not accelerationist. There is an underlying idea among many Marxists that Karl was an accelerationist, but I do not feel that to be the case, even though he objectively did present accelerationist ideas to his analysis of capital. After resigning from Warwick University in 1998, Land, alongside Sally Plant and Mark Fisher, co-founded the Cybernetic Culture Research Unit, which was a thought collective, if you could call it that, more of a club, rather, formed outside of Warwick University. Most people who are associated with the CCRU included, like I said, Land, Plant, and Mark Fisher. But enough of this boring history. What I'm trying to get at is this. Nick Land was crucial in the development of a school of thought known as accelerationism. Even though the ideas of accelerationism go back further and further, the word itself was coined by Professor Benjamin Noyes in his 2010 book, The Persistence of the Negative. Accelerationism is considered by many to be a loose group of multiple fringe ideas, and in my opinion is a direct offshoot of post-structuralism and the post-structuralist philosophers such as Jean Baudrillard. I did not say that correct. Baudrillard? I don't know. He's French. Although recently and historically the school of thought attracts many depraved actors, put simply, accelerationism, and I cannot stress this enough, accelerationism is the ideology of desperation. For example, Brenton Tarrant, the Christchurch shooter, claimed to have subscribed to accelerationism. He even dedicated a whole section of his manifesto to the ideas. And while his writings were racist, bigoted ravings of a white nationalist lunatic, it is worth noting that Tarrant is merely a statistic in the overall embracing of accelerationism among the far right. That being said, if anything is certain, it's that accelerationism is a futurist thought above anything else. Some accelerationists present more nihilistic attitudes. Others provide an opportunity for reflection and consideration of the potentiality of a less shitty world. Furthermore, Nick Land kicked off what is known as the Dark Enlightenment, which, okay, first off, baller-ass name. That is some gangsta shit. If you're gonna have a philosophical movement, you gotta give it a cool-ass name, or else you get stuck with fucking shit like the Young Hegelians or the Postmodernists. On philosophers, Land wrote, "Philosophers are vivisectors. They have all the precise and reptilian intelligence shared by all who experiment with living things." So right off the bat, we can get an idea of the idea of the size of this man's ego. Sorry, I'm dyslexic. And he only said one sentence. This was one part of a massive interview Land gave in 1997. Long story short, he fell off. He fell off hard. Or, as Ray Brazier, a colleague from the University of Warwick, said, and I quote, "Nick Land has gone from arguing politics is dead 20 years ago to this completely old-fashioned standard reactionary stuff." I think it is worth noting that I do not agree with literally anything that Nick Land says. Nick Land's ideology is very, very bigoted, to say the least. But what causes a man to fall off so hard? Well, the answer might not be as clear as the fact that he was very, very enthralled in an amphetamine addiction. He really loved speed. But this doesn't make sense, as he was enthralled in this same addiction during his philosophical peak. So the question remains. But, alas, I also think this is life. Nothing changes. Time progresses. Ashes to ashes. Cow to burger. Before we move on to his colleague Mark Fisher, allow me to say the following about Nick Land. He might have fallen down the rabbit hole. He might have lost his mind to some mid-tier speed from the 80s. But he certainly was a real one, and for that, we salute you. And now, a tangent on Mark Fisher. One of my favorite philosophers has to be Mark Fisher. In fact, I only brought up Nick Land because understanding him is essential when talking about Fisher. As discussed, Mark and Land were a part of the CCU thought collective. Mark was a punk. No, like literally. He was a working class lad from, and bear with me, Loughborough. And no, I do not know how to pronounce that. Do you? He really enjoyed the internet, so much that he created one of the most harrowing blogs I have ever read. He attended Warwick University, where he co-founded the Cybernetic Culture Research Unit. To understand how he spent his time at university, let me tell you about this little cool tidbit. During his time, he influenced this guy named Code 9. Who is Code 9? Well, to be honest, I had no fucking idea. So bippity boppity boopity, and a few clicks later, I found out that this person founded a massive record label called Hyperdub. So why am I talking so fondly of this man, you might be asking? Well, that's just because Mark Fisher was a swell guy. Way, way better than Nick Land. In the 1990s, Fisher's music group called D-Generation released a song called Entropy in the UK. I would play it if it didn't get copyrighted. See, I kind of forgot to mention that these folks made music, but Mark made music. This is from an article by The Wire. Quote, dance music, in particular drum and bass, was crucial to the unit's theorization of the relationship between society and sound in the era of sample technology, and Mark wrote widely on dance music at this time, sometimes under pseudonyms such as Dr. Mark de Rosario and Marie de Rosario. Mark loathed the formality of academia, and all I gotta say is me too, man. These folks are so fucking snooty for no reason, these elitist fucks. In 2003, he began the blog K-Punk, which according to Fisher was made because, quote, blogging seemed a more informal space, a way of tricking myself back into doing serious writing. I was able to con myself, thinking it doesn't matter, it's only a blog post, it's not an academic paper. Now, a common theme among these fellows was the concept of nothing mattering. Nihilism ran deep in these guys' veins, and Mark Fisher was no exception. That being said, K-Punk was good. K-Punk was really good. K-Punk was very good. Topics on the blog bounced all over the place, and in hindsight, it is incredibly obvious that this is due to Mark Fisher suffering from some type of mood disorder. In the year 2009, he published arguably his magnum opus, Capitalist Realism, Is There No Alternative?, which criticizes neoliberalism and how the ideology sustains himself. Or, according to Fisher, and I quote, capitalist realism insists on treating mental health as if it were a natural fact, like weather, but then again, weather is no longer a natural fact so much as a political, economic effect. In the 60s and 70s, radical theory in politics, Lang, Foucault, Deleuze, and Guattari, etc., coalesced around extreme mental conditions such as schizophrenia, arguing, for instance, that madness was not a natural but a political category. But what is needed now is a politicization of much more common disorders. Indeed, it is the very commonness which is the issue. In Britain, depression is now the condition that is most treated by the NHS. In his book, The Selfish Capitalist, Oliver James has convincingly posted a correlation between rising rates of mental distress and the neoliberal mode of capitalism produced in countries like Britain, the USA, and Australia. In line with James's claims, I want to argue that it is necessary to reframe the growing problem of stress and distress in capitalist societies, instead of treating it as an incumbent on individuals trying to resolve their own psychological distress. Indeed, that is of accepting the vast privatization of stress that has taken over the last 30 years. We need to ask, how has it become acceptable that so many people, and especially so many young people, are ill? End quote. How has it become acceptable that so many people, especially so many young people, are ill? This is a question that has been posed for a minute now. Each generation passes, and more have neurodivergence. Fisher proposes that this is a symptom, a result of capitalism, rather than the stress from the system. Or rather, Fisher proposes that this is a symptom of capitalism, rather, the stress from the system giving you the problem. In the book, he also proposes the idea that it becomes impossible to see a future that doesn't have neoliberalism. The general takeaway from capitalist realism is as follows, and I quote, "It is easier to imagine an end to the world than an end to capitalism," end quote. That's not very optimistic, but I'm sure Mark Fisher will be fine. I'm sure Marky Mark's got it. He was not fine. Fisher had talked about his struggles with mental health throughout his entire career, his entire life, and on January 13th, 2017, at the age of 48, Mark Fisher passed away of suicide. I think I'm going to leave you all with one of my favorite posts Mark ever wrote. It is simply titled, "Democracy is Joy." It is a wonderful read, and I will leave you with two of my favorite passages from the blog post. And I quote, "All vampires are first of all vampirized, and look at the long faces and manicured gray fingers of these ghouls, capital's oldest and most trusted servants, to see what capital does to its human resources. Long gone are the virile, predatory vampires that once populated horror stories about capitalism sucking out the vital essence of the proletariat in gothic fortresses of dead labor. Instead, shambling, worm-eating wrecks mill about aimlessly while augmenting their numbers in obscure cannibalistic circuits that defy rational comprehension and which are in any case too hideous to steadily contemplate. Fiends have degenerated into ghouls who do not hunt and feed to strengthen themselves, but only to carry on, prolonging their putrescent decrepitude." Nick Land. And now, the end. There is a possible alternative, however, in which the ownership and control of robots is disconnected from capital in its current form. The robots liberate most of humanity from work, and everybody benefits from the proceeds. We don't have to work in factories, or go down mines, or clean toilets, or drive long-distance lorries. We can choreograph and weave and garden and tell stories and invent things and set about creating a universe of wants. This would be the world of unlimited wants described by economics, but with a distinction between the wants satisfied by humans and the work done by our machines. It seems to me that the only way the world would work is with the alternative forms of ownership. The only reason for thinking this better world is possible is that the dystopian future of capitalism plus robots may prove just too grim to be politically viable. This alternative future would be the kind of world dreamed by William Morris, full of humans engaged in meaningful, insanely remunerated labor, except with added robots. It says a lot about the current moment that as we stand facing a future which might resemble either a hyper-capitalist dystopia or a socialist paradise, the second one doesn't even get a mention. The second option doesn't get a mention. End quote. Thank you for watching. I hope this has been informative. I hope this has been entertaining. Most of all, I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, thank you for watching, and I am out of here. Bye!